Good evening.
Good evening.
You are live here courtside with Lawman,
And Carmen B.
and we are here to talk about issues that impact the public and your community related to criminal law.
Definitely. We both have plenty of years of criminal law experience, and we're here to discuss issues in the criminal law realm, things that may be bothering you, things you may want to know.
We are here. You can reach out to us in the chat. If you have questions, you can post them in the chat. You can also call in at 916-443-5288 with your questions.
Or you can call later with me at 916-443-5600. But I got to tell you, anything we talk about is purely educational and informational and does not create an attorney-client privilege between Carmen B or Lawman and yourself.
Yes. If you need that confidential consultation, call Lawman at what was that number?
916-443-5600.
Or Carmen Butler at 916-443-5288.
All right, we got a half hour to go in our new format. Today, we were talking about racial inequality in the law, always, but we also threw in there Supreme Court.
Yes, yes. First of all, I want to apologize for the fact that we were not here for 2 weeks in a row, but I was seriously ill and Lawman was engaged in a jury trial. But we are back and we are going to keep it going strong every Friday at 6 p.m.
Definite. All right. So today we threw in Supreme Court. We might as well talk about this first. But first, recognizing what's happening in the world. It looks like we may soon enough be engaged in conflict here in the world. So hopefully those who have friends and neighbors in Ukraine and even in Europe, apparently, we wishing you well. Our prayers are to you, and we hope that this tyrannical move by Putin can be thwarted as soon as
Yes,
possible.
yes, most definitely.
Yeah. So we want to talk about Supreme Court because there is an opening in the Supreme Court of the United States, and this court, as you well know, and if you don't know, this court dictates the laws of the land
Yes, they have the absolute and final say.
on how the Constitution is interpreted and what laws we abide by, such as recently abortion,
Yes,
voting rights,
yes.
as well as marriage.
Yes, what laws are constitutional or unconstitutional?
And now we have a seat that's open on the bench.
Because one of the current justices is retiring.
Justice Breyer spent a long time there. He was a guy who they would call the liberal side of the bench, which I don't know what liberal and conservative mean in that respect because the Supreme Court is designed to be non-political. But now there's a seat open and Biden gets to choose and elect who can fill that seat.
Well, he gets to nominate
Right.
someone for that seat, and there will be hearings held in the Senate
Yep.
regarding that nominee.
And he said, and he promised that he would nominate a black woman. Now, I'll tell you this, in California, just recently, a lady from the 4th Appellate District here in California was nominated to the California Supreme Court, a Latina woman. And she is the first Latina woman to serve on the California Supreme Court. And now
Biden has nominated, and I'm not sure of the correct pronunciation of her name, but I believe it's Ketanji Brown Jackson for the Supreme Court.
I think, came from federal.
It was for a long time a federal public defender. And that is one of the things that is rare. I don't believe right now on that court, there is not an attorney who is one of the justices who is from the criminal defense side of the
True.
law.
Usually it's prosecution side of the law, or for Supreme Court, it's someone in one of the 13 circuit courts, which are federal courts throughout the United States.
Yes.
And that's usually where they'll elevate someone from, either there or a district court. But it's very hard because you've got so many circuits and they have so many judges. So you do have a nice big pool to choose from.
Yes. We see you, CC Badger, and thank you for watching.
Thank you for the love.
Yes, we
So here we have black female nominated. He said he would do it, and he did it.
There are a lot of people who, I don't know a lot. There are some people who are upset about the fact that he had indicated that he would nominate an African American woman.
Right.
I don't know why this causes them, concern, because her credentials are impeccable. I believe she attended Harvard.
Okay.
So what can they say to that? And now I do recall there have been, and I want to say it was Bush who had the opportunity at one point to nominate someone. And it honestly appeared like he stepped outside of the Oval Office and just said, any female that's an attorney, you. And he nominated someone. That person, I believe they refused the nomination at any point. They didn't even get to the point of hearings. Right. And I don't think as many people were up in arms about that.
I'll tell you something else historically here about this selection. Remember, after Brown v. Board, Thurgood Marshall was put on this Supreme Court. Thurgood was a lawyer for the NAA Legal Defense Fund. So it's rare that you get someone who's a lawyer and they get selected to be on this bench unless they're trying to make a statement. And Thurgood was clearly a statement, but also, as I argue many times, it cut off the head of the snake. The snake was biting the United States like you wouldn't believe. The NAACP just won Brown versus Board over 9 years, opening up segregation. And then they took the head and put him on the Supreme Court. And then he couldn't engage with his friends, with all his colleagues anymore, fighting for the NAACP. Because once you become a judge, you got to give all that stuff up.
Yes. And just to be clear, when Lawman says it's unusual for them to put a lawyer on, of course, all of the justices are attorneys. They are lawyers, but they are not usually practicing lawyers. Right. Usually at the time that they get the nomination, they are already judges, sitting judges in some other court at the time at which they get the nomination to the Supreme Court, as is our new nominee, Mrs. Brown Jackson.
Now, and that is unusual because now the vetting process goes a little further. It's not a judge who has a record of making decisions and things like that. Now the vetting process goes all the way back to your work and what you do and colleagues and things like that. So that's why it's rare that you'll see that as a nomination, someone who comes from the actual legal field.
Well, she is not currently from the legal field. She actually is a judge.
Oh, we're okay. Yes. How long and where then?
I believe, I believe she just got nominated, or I believe she's been on the appeals court for a year.
Okay.
And I believe prior to that, she had a federal judgeship. I want to say,
probably Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, who has its own circuit court system and district court system. We have 13 circuits throughout the United States. We, California, are in the 9th Circuit. So these circuit court judges are judges who hear federal matters, either federal question or diversity jurisdiction matters, but definitely issues regarding the Constitution. They hear these matters on a regular basis. That's why they could ask individuals like, well, what were your opinions regarding abortion? What were your opinions regarding voting rights and things like that?
So she, I believe, was a federal trial judge for 8 years. Okay. And then for approximately, I guess, about almost a year, she has been on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia.
I figured that. She's only 51 years old, too. And you serve on this board or this court.
It's a lifetime appointment.
Exactly. So, she probably got 25 good years in her before she hopefully steps down, in glory, right? So,
well, if she's like
Clarence Thomas.
Ginsburg, no, I'm saying if she's like Ginsburg, Stay up there
to
50
stay
years.
and you know, and that's been the trend. I mean, when you're on this, you're on for life. So you're on no matter what president comes in, the next
Yes.
Congress that comes in, you're on.
You can choose to retire at a certain point.
Right.
And sometimes people should. I believe there are some justices who
stay
a little bit longer than what they should.
Some die.
And
So
yes.
That's another way of attrition. What you notice is this. This is how non-political this position should be. At the inauguration for presidents, the Supreme Court is sitting in the front row. When you see them give speeches, you see one side or the other get up and they're giving them standing ovations and everything every minute. When they point to the judges are all sitting there in their robes and they're not clapping. They're not doing any expressions or anything because they can't get up and say, yay, woo, and things like that.
Because they're supposed to remain fairly impartial.
Exactly. Like any judge should be impartial.
Should be, but we know they aren't always.
Well, they're human, aren't they? And they were also raised in where? United States of America. So, of course, they're going to suffer from all the ills that society suffers from. But they're in positions with power, judicial power, to change lives. So we hope that she doesn't fall into this realm of individuals who want her out. Therefore, they will delay this nomination or they'll delay the approval process. We hope that won't happen. But it generally does. I mean, it generally does. And here's the thing, the question I want to pose. Is it wrong? Just like here, Gavin Newsom picking a Latina woman. Is it wrong to say, I want a black woman to serve on that board or on the, I keep saying board, on the court?
Is it wrong all the years when they have selected nothing but, all the years men? Where they selected nothing but white men?
Not even women?
Was that wrong? Yeah, it was a long time before there was a woman on the court.
Right. And so diversity is the word that everyone will throw up. Is we want a diverse Supreme Court. We have a Latina woman on there.
But this isn't being done. I don't believe this is being done specifically for diversity in such as someone saying, oh, it's a quota. No, it's not a quota. She is as qualified to be on that court as anyone, and probably more than some of the people who are on that court.
This is very similar to the lack of African-American coaches in the NFL and what has happened with that lawsuit that Brian Flores filed. Very similar. There are rules in place that people should be vetted and, your qualifications should stand against everything. But we know that sometimes people will just follow a rule just to get past the rule, but yet they won't hire an African-American coach. And we've seen in that lawsuit of Brian Flores which was very brave of him to do. And if anybody doesn't know, he was the coach of the Miami Dolphins, 2 winning seasons, and they fired him. And he's made allegations that are strong that they wanted him to tank games. They wanted him to shut up and not say anything about the personnel. And so he has filed a federal lawsuit, basically, against the NFL and brought up a lot of issues and stuff. And the NFL is denying and organizations are denying, but it'll be ferreted out in court. And it's sort of like what we know, it'll be ferreted out in what's called discovery process.
So I believe the Supreme Court has been around for 232 years.
Exactly.
They did not put a woman on that court until I believe it was 1981. And it was Sandra Day O'Connor.
Yep.
So many generations in that 232 years of men, and all white men, except for when they put Thurgood Marshall on, and then, of course, Clarence Thomas.
Right. So, and if you think about it, remember the Supreme Court, Marbury versus Madison. was one of the most famous decisions because they had to clarify we are the law of the land, that the states can only go so far with states' rights. And that's why, of course, the Civil War came up, because the states were saying, well, we can do this. It's not in the Constitution. It was in the 13th Amendment, but that didn't come until after. So Marbury versus Madison, Dred Scott, right? Decisions on segregation, decisions on separation, all of these things. And then the comeback was Brown versus Board. But that was a 9-year legal battle that takes forever to really discuss. And it was a huge effort by Thurgood and Houston and so many other great Black lawyers at the NAACP in order to end segregation. And there's a huge debate that I think can go on that ending segregation, wanting integration, was not probably the best idea at the time because people wouldn't accept it. That's when you saw the governor of Arkansas, I believe, standing, you're not coming into my schools, they have to bust the kids in. And you see those sad stories of them walking in a sea of white people trying to go to school.
And you see
Little Rock, actually, yeah.
And you see adults mistreating children.
Exactly. And so
this happened in America
after the 50s. Okay, so all of these years had gone by and people did not accept integration. And I think it's still going on today. And it was just fueled when Trump was in power, because people, I believe, were empowered to the extent that they expressed themselves to that. And then we see what happened on January 6th when he was on his way out, that people were expressing themselves again with threats against sitting Congress, sitting vice president, which is amazing in this country's history. We've had assassinations of presidents and things like that, and we've had full-scale war on Black congressmen throughout history, because history will tell you we had so many people in Congress in the 1919s, the 20s, the turn of the century, the Reconstruction years, right before the Great Depression. We had so many Blacks because they gave us the right to vote, made us citizens, freed us from slavery. All of those things together in the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment empowered individuals. And they were empowered and they did their thing. And look at what happened in the 50s and 60s. One of the biggest battles, right, was voting rights. Because we realized that when we organize and we vote, we put in Black candidates and we send them to Washington. I just saw a PBS special, touch me I'm a Mississippi person, Fannie Lou Hamer. Fannie Lou Hamer's America. I ask anybody, go watch that show. It's all about her struggle, being from Mississippi and the decisions she had to make and the things that she did and the impact that she made. And this woman, when I see her talk, when I see what she says and does, I see my parent, I see my mom, I see my grandma in her. She's from deep down in Mississippi. And it brings up such a great deal of pride to know that she put herself out there. She was beaten, ostracized, you just name it. And yet she fought. She never lost sight that she couldn't hate people. She wanted to help people who were poor. And she did everything she could to do that. And so watch the PBS special, Fannie Lou Hamer. And you can understand why voting rights are so important.
And
so important.
While this is the last Friday of Black History Month,
True,
we must remind people Black history is American history.
Exactly.
It can be taught all throughout the year because it is the history of America. And we cannot let the fact that there are people who want to pretend that certain facts didn't happen in history and don't want those facts to be taught. Those are the same people who talk about revisionist history, and they are the ones trying to revise history. It's okay to talk about what really happened. That's to make sure that we don't repeat what happened in the past.
And if you want to make America great again, then America was great because Black people persevered and fought for their rights. That is what made America great.
Yes.
So, they want to go back and make America great, but they want to erase our history at the same time. And that would just be wrong in a democratic society. It is wrong. And anyone who speaks of that is actually, I believe, treasonous of a democratic society. And pretty soon we see what happens when that occurs right now with Russia taking over Ukraine.
Yeah. And Russia just saying, you know what? I'm going to change the history.
That's right.
Ukraine belonged to us. I think I saw an article where they said that one of the government agencies in Ukraine, when they tweeted out what showed what Moscow looks like versus what Ukraine looked like during the same time, I forget how many hundreds of years ago it was. And it showed that Ukraine had churches and Moscow had dirt.
Yeah. Well, they were jealous, let's say. Ukraine was progressing, being very progressive.
But I think people tend to look at these events that are happening somewhere else in the world and think that could never happen here.
Right.
I might say at one point in time, I probably, as a young person, believed that.
Yep.
I don't believe that anymore. Right. When I see the types of people that Donald Trump
inspired,
awakened, made them brave in expressing their views of hatred.
Yeah.
So don't think that's what's happening in Ukraine can't happen here in some form or fashion. And it may not be an invading nation. It may come from within, the citizenry within. Now, we do need to talk about, because a number of things happened while we were gone.
Yeah.
There was another no-knock warrant where law enforcement officers, I believe it was in Minneapolis, went into a young man's apartment where he was sleeping. And when you're asleep, if something startles you, you're going to jump up. And they shot and killed this young man in his own home. And if I remember correctly, he was not even the subject of the warrant.
I don't know for sure, but it's.
I believe there were other people who were, I'm not even sure if they resided at that address, who were the subject of the warrants. That he was not the subject of the warrant at all, and took his life. These no-knock warrants have to stop. You can't just keep going into homes, and it mainly happens to who? To poor people, to African-American people.
Yeah. That's.
You can't just keep coming into our homes when we're asleep and killing us.
I think that happened to Fred Hampton. So it is historical. It is a way police can operate and create a danger.
And it makes us as American citizens, because that's who we are. We're African American, but we are American citizens, as American as the next person. Right. And we should not be, is not the home meant to be the castle, where the one place where you should be safe, where your children should be safe?
Right. And that's historical. White, black, or not. I mean, that is the way, what the dream of this country was to get away from tyranny and the government being able to abuse its citizens. And it's exactly the kind of thing that we sometimes see, like in the 60s and in the 50s, and when it was huge organizations, partial government, squeezing the citizens. And it's now, I guess, when you do forget history, when you try to forget history, you do have a tendency to repeat it. And my fear, and I talk to people all the time about this, is that, look, the way the Supreme Court is made up, they could say, that's separate but equal thing. Let's do that again. They're already doing things like gerrymandering, redistricting,
which is drawing the districts in a way such as to dilute
Black vote.
Yes.
They're trying to kill the vote altogether by putting a restriction on voting, which is very similar to the poll tax and all of the educational requirements that you had to have before you can vote. There should never be any restriction on voting. Citizen, vote. And even now, we the rumors throughout the years of I got a criminal record, I can't vote, or I'm in county jail, I can't vote. That's all a myth. All a myth.
Again, it depends on what state you live in.
Well,
Because there are
sure.
some states where
California.
that is the case. But yes.
But in California, and I'm gonna tell you, I think some other states too. If we can go research it and look and see though. But you know that it's I really think when you start suppressing that vote, when you start making decisions that are putting part of your citizenry at odds, reducing their power, like the gerrymandering and this redistricting, you are reducing the whole democratic process. Period. It's almost gone. There, even now, because of Black History Month, people are looking back, you know, at things and changes and things. Covenants and leases, covenants and developments that you can't buy here, blacks can't move here, things like that. They were in leases and deeds and things like that.
And enforced.
Yeah. And they supposedly were supposed to stop, but you know, every now and then somebody looks at a lease or something and says, wait a minute, you know, I'm not to sell my house or I'm not to rent to a certain amount, certain people. And it becomes news for a minute. And when it becomes news, you know what happens is everybody's looking at their agreements going, oh my goodness, we've been using this for 50, 60 years. We just didn't notice. But you noticed that certain people couldn't move in. So we're talking about a country whose stain is huge. It was born on genocide and slavery. It thrived on the abuse of people.
It grew rich
on the abuse
of people.
And then when it supposedly set people free, it was a smokescreen because we started seeing things like the prison industry system. We started seeing things like poverty and jobs and ghettos and keeping people poor and ignorant.
And being poor is not a crime.
No.
And should not be a crime.
It's a condition, but it's a condition in the richest land in the nation. So there's a little problem with that because you're only supposed to be as good as your lowest person. But it seems that with democracy built in with capitalism, that lowest person shall be forgotten. That 99%, shall be forgotten because we must protect the 1%. So that's a lot of preaching tonight. There's a lot of talking about our government and what we got to watch out for. But the same theme that we run every time: vote, be knowledgeable citizens. Don't let your lack of knowledge allow someone to take advantage of you.
Yes. Because
learning the knowledge is easy. It's just, what are you going to do when you find out? And I think that strikes I bet you any what we will call a successful Black person has had to go through that particular thing. Once you learn something, once you know you can read something, you're inspired to never look back, because education is the key to change. It is the key. And once you know something, someone can't take it from you. It's like our legal degrees, right? You can do whatever you want with me. But if I got my license to practice law, I got my license to practice law. You're not going to take away that from me, the knowledge. So, racial equality in the law, it's always an issue. It'll always be on our mind. Right.
We are not there yet.
Right. Putting this lady on the bench, good move. Yes. Hopefully she gets there in our lifetime. But
hopefully she is fair and impartial.
Yes.
Because we certainly are not about just
Just
putting color
exactly.
on the bench for the purpose of having color.
Right.
I think we have seen what can happen in that instance where
Right.
you have someone who looks like you,
Right.
but who rules against what
Right.
happens to the majority of you
Yeah.
on a daily basis.
So we got to care about voting. We got to fight to vote at every level, at every stump, everywhere. Local elections are important. School board elections are important. City, council, DA, judges are important. And like she says, look, it isn't just because of blackface, because you got to go listen to them and see what they're saying.
What are their policies?
Right.
What will they really do?
Right. And I would never support someone.
And not just listen to what they're saying, because sometimes there are people who are running for office who will say what you want to hear. But what you have to look at is what have their actions been to get them to the point where they are now.
Right. And you got to ask them, what are you going to do in the future? It's the same questions that the senators are going to be asking this nominee for the Supreme Court. They're going to ask her, what's your philosophy on this? What would you do if this kind of case came before you? And she'll say, like every other judge, I will follow the law of stare decisis. I will follow the law that has been there before until and if it is time to change it. So, you know, we're thrilled a little bit that I'm more thrilled that he followed his word than anything. You know, he said he was going to do it and he did it. Now, does that mean he gets points? I don't know. We'll see. But it is marking a change if she can actually be on that bench.
Confirmed.
Yeah. And we got to look out for other things too. It is not like we talked about the warrant. Everywhere in our society, you know, there are things going on that we really, really have always got to be aware of. And so we try to bring that to you on a Friday afternoon. Please, those who may see us on a Friday, join us at 6:00. Come at us with questions, concerns, because we're going to have something to talk about. So, Carm, it looks like our time is short.
It is.
But it's been a lively conversation. We've been on the same page tonight completely, which is beautiful. But sometimes we should debate some issues and things like that.
And we do.
Yeah. So we wish you well. Those who may see us, please come back and visit us. And we're going to try to push out there to get the word out that we're here and that we're willing to talk. We're willing to educate.
Every Friday at 6 p.m. courtside with Lawman
and Carmen B.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.